This is a Film Stories original podcast.
We made this.
Welcome everyone to the X-Cast. The truth is in here. This is our special Fight the Future Minute podcast. I'm Russ Hugo, and you are listening to the coverage of Minute 47 of the X-Files, Fight the Future. This minute begins at 46 minutes, and this is when Scully has showed up to the field office and begins to examine the fossils, and ends at 46:59. So to discuss this minute, I'm joined by fellow X-Castee host Deana Ferreri. I hope your day is still going well.
My day is still going well. Thanks, Russ.
I haven't ruined it completely. Just wait. So now you've got a lot of good notes for this minute. I know it.
I have some interesting notes for this minute, yes.
You know what I'm going to let? Just go straight into it. I want to stop hogging the mic. It's all you.
Okay, so I noticed something pretty interesting because one of the things I was doing, preparing for this, was I watched these minutes with the captioning on to make sure I was getting everything. And there's this conversation between Mulder and Scully where they're talking about the tissue samples, the blood and tissue samples that she took from the fireman who she did the autopsy of, and how and what she found. So she said that what they were infected with, what the men were infected with, she said it contains a protein coat that I've never seen before. And I noticed on the captioning, it says protein code, C-O-D-E, but I heard protein coat, C-O-A-T. And so I started thinking about that a little bit, and one of the things I noticed, because I watched the rest of the movie then with the captioning, is the captioning, at least on my DVD, is terrible. And there's a lot of moments where what is in the captioning is not exactly what they're saying. But anyway, in this particular case, I think she actually is saying protein coat, C-O-A-T, which is like it's this outer shell outside of the genome of the virus. So it's a protein shell that like encapsulates it and protects it. So what she's found is a virus that she's not familiar with, or she's saying basically probably no one is familiar with. And of course this would be like a huge public health hazard. I think they haven't really, the two of them, Mulder and Scully, haven't really discussed yet that Mulder thinks this is extraterrestrial. Scully's just thinking of it as like this is a huge, this could be a huge health emergency.
We only have just a few diseases where people are basically liquefied and turned into plastic in, less than a week. It'd make me a little bit nervous.
Yeah, you can see why Scully's so worried about that. And I guess to go back to what we were talking about in the last minute, where I was sort of curious as to why she was still moving ahead with this. Well, maybe after seeing, I think that's what we're supposed to get maybe in this minute, that she wasn't really planning on coming to Dallas, but then she got these results from the samples she took, and she was so alarmed and so concerned that's why she decided to keep going, because this could be so dangerous and contagious. And she was walking around with no mask on in the autopsy room.
I was actually looking forward to all the minutes here to talk about with you, because I believe you have a science background.
I do.
When I was reading that protein coat, and also the subtitle said coat too, I was thinking, okay, how does that relate for vectors or things like that? And I don't know what your area of expertise is, but what is your background? Because you've mentioned it a few times. And what are your thoughts from that angle?
I do have a background in biomedical science, but I did not. I studied human cells, human endothelial cells. So I mean, I made some viruses, but I didn't work with, like, real viruses.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's... well, viruses...
That's understated. You're the first person I've ever met or talked to who's made a virus that wasn't on a computer, so...
I mean, you sort of have tools. You buy the tools and you make it, but viruses are used a lot in research and now they're starting to be used in or I don't know, maybe not just starting, but in medicine too, because if you want a human cell if you want to introduce DNA into a human cell and get that human cell to express that DNA, like, you know, code it and like use it for code and make it into a protein or make a protein from the code, you need to get it into the cell. And that's actually not easy because human cells know how to protect themselves from infection or how to protect themselves in general, but infection with a virus, they're a little more vulnerable to. So if you use a virus that doesn't have anything dangerous in it, it just has the stuff that allows it to infect a cell, that's how you can get DNA into a cell. Hopefully that made sense.
It makes enough sense in the sense
enough.
That I understand. You've explained very well the basic mechanisms. Would I go further on anything? No, but it's still very interesting and exciting to learn about. So, any little tidbits? Yeah.
So to relate that to what Scully is saying, as far as I understand, the protein coat of a virus is coded, those proteins are coded for by the virus genome. So if the protein coat is something that's some protein or sequence of amino acids or whatever that she's never heard of or never seen and is not really known, well, then that probably means that this virus is something that is completely unknown also.
And that's where I'm a little confused, is you would term that see, when you first use CODE, that made a little bit more sense to me, like a protein code. I think of an organization or something like this, but I think of a coat, the shell, the covering. Can you clarify maybe which of these it is that she's referring to and how that specifically relates? Does that make sense, my question?
Yeah, okay. So the protein coat of a virus is this sort of outer coating. So a virus itself is made of either DNA or RNA. And then there is this protein coat around it that protects it. That's like the basic...
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
Those are like the two basic components of a virus. But the protein coat that's around the virus is like specific to that virus. So I guess when Scully's saying this protein coat I've never seen before, she means basically like this must be a virus we've never seen before because the protein coat is something I've never heard of. At least that's my read of it.
Great. No, fabulous. We got the right person for this minute. Thank you. And I apologize for my ignorance. My biology 101 knowledge from however decades ago has failed.
Yeah. Well, I actually I taught, this was a long time ago, but I taught microbiology as an adjunct for 2 semesters, and I still had to go remind myself what a protein coat was today. I had to go look it up because I couldn't remember. So
you're too kind covering for me like that. Oh boy, I'll PayPal you the $20 humility fee, and we'll go from there. And let's see. So you were also talking about the bits about the end. You liked the scene with the microscope. Did you want to talk about that?
Oh, yeah. I really like that scene because you just see, like, there's no words. You just see Scully's eyes. You see her look in the microscope. You see her eyes widen. You see her look at Mulder. And you just know, like, how serious this is. And you also wonder, like, what did she see? Because she didn't see a virus. You can't see anything that small in that microscope. I think we find out later. She says that she says that the bones were porous, as if they were like being sort of decomposed or eaten away by something. And she said that was what the bone, that like sort of hard plastic bone that she pulled out of the fireman. that's what that looked like under the microscope.
Yeah, this I think works well. I mean, the film, as we've talked about, cuts to a lot of, away from scenes without explaining things, but I think this works well. It connects back around and you can piece it together pretty well. I think it's well staged. Great. Any last bits about minute 47, besides we have another example of Mulder's hunches paying off, that you want to touch on before we move?
I think that covers it for me.
Terrific. Thanks, everybody. So until our next minute, remember, as always, trust no one.
Previously on the We Made This Network. Make it so.
Someday we will sing songs of the battle of Discovery's survival. Through adversity. Yeah. And, Tony, if it had been any other series, if it had been any other project, if it had been any other project other than, being the flagship to launch a whole new commercial enterprise by a little entity no one ever heard of called CBS, if it had not had a three-way pressure point, if there'd been this kind of problem in development on anything else, they would have pulled the plug and, walked away. But it was Star Trek, and it had to launch this new series, and the whole world is watching. So, by God, keep throwing money at it until we get something on the screen, literally.
Pull or pass?
Amazon Prime in the UK is now listing New Mutants as a pre-order.
Yes.
It's got a 12 rating, and it's got no release date.
Yeah.
But you can pay for it up front.
You can. And, I'm almost tempted, because it'll just kind of drop in your Amazon when it's available. And it's a film I've wanted to see for a very long time. I wonder whether we'll notice that the cast have aged by the time we get to see that film.
The Movie Palace.
Okay, so the main reason we're here, of course, is this new book, Daring Darlene, Queen of the Scream. How would you describe this book to people who are unaware of it? You can give away as much of the story as you want, I guess. But yeah, how would you kind of pitch it, I suppose?
Well, it's a story of a girl named Darlene, who has been an actress in the silent film industry since earliest childhood. She was a child star.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.